Welcome to MT Mindfulness. Today, I am joined by Victor Shiryaev. Victor is a mindfulness teacher, well-being, as well as in terms of contemplative studies and mindfulness-related topics. His current interest lies in early non-dual Mahayana practices and what they can offer to us, 21st century humans, as well as in social forms of meditation. He has a degree in Sinology and Integral Theory, a certificate in Embodiment Facilitation, and spent more than half a year in silent meditation retreats. So welcome, Victor.
Thanks for inviting me.
Victor, so people have some context. Whereabouts are you in the world?
Right. I'm living now in Thailand since 2019, so about 5 years already. We are residing currently here with my wife and my 8-year-old son. Yeah, so Thailand, Koh Phangan Island specifically.
If I could kind of bring you back in terms of your childhood and growing up, have you always had an interest in contemplative practices and spirituality, or was it kind of fostered? You know, what was the background?
Right. I'd say yes and no. I mean, I was born in the Soviet Union, in then Leningrad, St. Petersburg, and I was born to a mixed family. My father is Russian, my mother is Jewish. Both atheists and proverbial Soviet engineers, so nothing spiritual, nothing like explicitly religious about them. But being half Jewish, I was always tending more to the Jewish side because it's the more oppressed kind of ethnicity and so on. And also because I attended a Jewish school for 10 years. So, I mean, a compulsory school, just a normal school, but it was Jewish, the staff members, the tradition, the language, history, and so forth. So we were praying, we were, wearing the special hat outfit and so forth. So I was introduced to religious and spiritual topics from a very young age. And also, I guess I was just pretty sensitive as a child. I took interest in altered states of consciousness while still being in school. I was reading a lot about shamanism and kind of trying shamanic stuff.
Did your parents find that strange at all?
No, they were very open,
they were open to,
like very educated liberal people. They were whatever. I mean, around the ninth grade, I stumbled across some literature on transpersonal psychology. So a few years before graduating from secondary school, I was already reading Stanislav Grof, stuff on transpersonal psychology. So I definitely had some interest in all that. And then when I enrolled to the Oriental department of St. Petersburg State University, so started reading Chinese Buddhism, the early sutras, Buddhist sutras, and also slowly practicing different stuff, mostly like Advaita, Vedanta-ish kind of things. I mean...
So just going back slightly, Victor, because I'm really curious. So that's quite unique as an interest, having the shamanism and the transpersonal psychology. Was there something that you were looking for, or was it just mainly as an interest, or did you felt pulled to it? So there was that side of that question, as well as how did your peers or friends kind of view that interest?
was not a strange child at all. I was
Okay.
just a very normal child. Well,
Yeah.
like, wearing glasses, an educated individual, reading a lot, and
Yeah.
so on. So nothing strange about it. But what drew me to those topics, I guess, was an interest in mysticism, I would say. So I always felt there is some dimension or a layer to the world that's beyond the reach of our senses, of our direct perceptions. So I was curious in various ways to maybe not hack, but to peer, kind of, to have a peek, you
Yeah.
know, behind the curtain. And so I think that was the main drive. Some people say that they wanted to, in their spiritual quest, they wanted to understand who they were or to get rid of suffering. My main question, I guess, was, what is it all about?
Yeah.
Like something like this, you know?
Yeah. And then from there, you started looking at the Eastern literature.
Right, right.
Yeah. Um,
Eastern, Western,
okay.
everything. But my main inspiration at that point was Ken Wilber and
Okay.
his writings on the integral theory. So he tried to answer this precise question, what is going on here? How does it all work? Why everything is the way it is? And providing a sort of a comprehensive framework to fit in all the bits of knowledge from all the different traditions, peoples, times, and so on, and a coherent, comprehensive kind of framework to understand it all. So I found it very, very thought provoking, very awe-inspiring, and very useful in setting my own coordinates, so to speak. So, okay, now I see what's what.
Yeah. I know that you know Chinese. So at what point did you started studying Chinese?
Just an accident, a coincidence.
Yeah.
I was a bit early in school, so I graduated when I was 16, and it's probably too early to decide what you want to do in life, or
Yeah.
to get enrolled to a university. So I didn't know what I want to do. Definitely some humanitarian stuff, definitely the humanities, not the science, not the precise sciences, not mathematics or something like that. So literature or languages or history or stuff like this. And at some point, we were with my parents. We were outside of the city, somewhere in the nature, and a friend of ours. I actually remember us walking in the forest along a certain path,
Yeah.
and we were talking about my future. They were asking my parents what I decided to do, to be, and I didn't know what I want to do. So they advised my parents that look into the Chinese studies, because it's very promising. China's on the rise, and you'll always find work as a Chinese speaking person, as an interpreter, and so
Yeah.
forth. So I was like, okay, why not? Why not
Yeah.
China? Why not Chinese? And I got enrolled. There were two programs. One is like philology, so language based, and one is history based. So my specialty was history, Chinese history.
Yeah.
But of course, we're studying Chinese, Japanese, and everything around the the sinology field of knowledge. So yeah, and after graduating from university, I went to China, and I stayed there for many years, around 7 years. Actually, the longest I've stayed in one place after I left Russia around
Wow.
when I was 18 was China. So 7 years in China, and now in Thailand around 5 years. So getting close.
It's catching up to the longest.
Right,
and at
right.
that time, did you have an interest in meditation and practice?
Right, I did. I've always practiced something. I've
Yeah.
always practiced something. As I told you already, I had particular interest in Advaita Vedanta-ish kind of practices, self-inquiry. Nisargadatta Maharaj, I Am That,
Yeah.
was my, so to speak, my go-to book, my go-to volume. And so I used to practice many different things. And while in China, I was practicing Chinese internal arts, the so-called internal
Is this Taoist?
martial arts.
Oh, okay.
Qigong and
Qigong, okay.
Baghuazhan,
Baghuazhan.
a martial art.
Yeah.
And so I used to practice, but I didn't have any consistent meditation practice by that point. I used to do this and that, but nothing consistent, and nothing that I'd actually understand what the hell I'm doing. So by 2009, I was in a very deep personal crisis. I was there in China staying with my then wife. And I had a wife, I had an apartment, a car, a dog, but I got completely dissatisfied with my life. A pretty good position, like my job there, but like nothing related to the Chinese anything, just very down to earth stuff, shipments and manufacturing and all that. And and while still being there, I decided to find a meditation teacher. I had this inclination, and I couldn't find, because at that point internet was not very developed, and especially Chinese part of internet, very special place, and not too many meditation teachers on the internet, so maybe through some connections you could find some people, but most of them, because of the Cultural Revolution, the whole communist stuff, of course 2000s the situation got much better, but still most of the more prominent teacher left the country, so more of them in Taiwan, more of them in Hong Kong, not the mainland. So I couldn't find anyone. And then by a chance, I don't actually remember how, maybe through Buddhist geeks or somehow, I found Shinzen.
Yeah.
And as you well know, he was an early adopter of all things digital. So it was wonderful. I could study while still staying in China. I could attend his retreats, home practice program, which is still running every month up to this date. Is unbelievable, man.
I know.
So I began to get involved, and I began practicing like every month that I could join. I couldn't join, a very big time difference, so sometimes I would stay up all night, and sometimes I would practice with the recordings, and then I got involved with the community, got introduced to Shinzen, started to was in the first cohort of people trying to learn how to teach what was called basic mindfulness back then, unified mindfulness now, and and it was all happening while I was still in China, so it was just awesome. I've never met Shinzen actually. Maybe this year in China, of all places, maybe we'll meet. Yeah.
Just going back slightly in terms of reminiscing, yes, I remember the home practice program, and I'm guessing that you had to make phone calls from Russia because I had to try to find the cheapest rate in order to be able to
Right.
call the line. Yeah. So Skype,
Skype
okay,
back
Skype, okay,
then.
yes,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, China, Skype. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um,
I was Skyping.
and how would you say, coming across Shinzen's material and teachings, how did that kind of change for you, your understanding and practice and
I
so on?
mean, oh my God. I mean, I don't have any words to describe it. Literal now, I have goosebumps all over my body just,
Yeah,
thinking about this, literally. Um, Shinzen likes to say that an encounter with the Japanese monks saved his life. I wouldn't say an encounter with Shinzen saved my life exactly, but it was, I mean, he's like a godfather to me, or some
the
sort of
Godfather of mindfulness.
parental. Yeah, but I don't mean it in a
No,
mafia,
but yeah, no.
um, sense, but more like he gave me something my parents couldn't give me, a vital and an extremely important part of how to be a human being in this world. So basically, everything that I do now, and well, most of what I am now, I'm indebted to Shinzen for sure. Um, uh, when I again, I don't remember how exactly I stumbled across his teachings, but he was always very open, putting everything online, the manuals, the talks, and
Yeah,
start the YouTube was starting at that point, and his way of talking about all this stuff resonated with me profoundly, because he was this unbelievable person who was at the same time extremely precise, up to date, scientifically minded, very clear in what he says, how he says it, what to do, how to do it, why you should do it. So very, very clear and all that. And at the same time, he has this amazing personality, very poetic, a polymath, speaking different languages, and it resonated with me, So being very heartful and poetic on one side, but at the same time being very clear and very precise in what you do. And I. To the best of my abilities, I try to emulate this. Well, not emulate is not the right word, but
yeah,
to embody it, to
yeah,
manifest it as well. And yeah, I guess we all have our kinds of teachers, teachers that resonate with us, teachers that speak to us. And Shinzen definitely was and still is my guy.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And
So
I
so
think what
yeah, I
what
just go. I
and I think what I find admirable is he's willing to share that knowledge openly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. We don't. That's my conviction as well. We don't have a copyright on knowledge or
yeah,
information or language. So I'm trying always to be very clear that I don't sell any knowledge. Yes, yes. As a mindfulness teacher, I charge for my classes, for working one on one, for
yeah.
doing classes, but it's because I have to sustain myself, and it's not because I have some valuable information that I only willing to give you if you pay the money.
Yes, yeah,
Everything that I do, like 100% of what I do is already online. I
yeah,
mean, I've done it all, like posts, articles, magazine interviews, YouTube videos, courses, offline classes, one-on-one work, organizing conferences, you name it. So literally everything that I know and that I teach is always for free out there online. And yes, I took it from Shinzen for sure.
Yeah.
Also, because I took it from Shinzen, how can I sell it? I mean, it was offered to me for free, so I'm just spreading the good news.
Yeah. Um, am I correct? You did some translation of some of
Right,
his work, didn't you?
right,
That
right.
must have helped you kind of integrate the material as well as
Absolutely.
you did the translation.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are two parts to this question, to this thing.
Yeah.
First is, yeah, I'm an interpreter by trade. So what I do is interpret, or what's the word? Conduct. Like a semiconductor. Like
Yeah.
a conductor,
Yes.
like the stuff that gets the thing across. Right. Uh, by definition, when you interpret something, like the early Chinese teachers who were translating stuff like Buddhist stuff from India into the Chinese language,
Yeah.
right? It's a very different language, a very different system, a very different set of like principles of how it's organized. So in order to translate the knowledge, the methods, the views from one language into another, you have to get it through your own understanding of how it works and how
Yeah.
it is best to tell about it in this next
Yeah.
language, in this different language. So yeah, I was interpreting English, Russian, Chinese. I speak Hebrew also, and so I always had this kind of a mind of an interpreter
Yeah.
of sorts. So of course, when I got introduced to Shinzen and his manuals that were openly there for everyone to read and download. And given that most of the Russian speaking people don't actually know English, to the degree they can read articles. Nowadays, it's pretty different. You can run it through chat GPT or something, or
Yeah.
DeepL, or whatever. Most of the people don't do even that even now, but back then for sure. So yeah, I began to translate all of the things that he had available on his old website, and I've translated pretty much everything there was, and I got quite famous in the Russian-speaking mindfulness meditation movement and community because of those efforts, because I
Yeah.
was outputting a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So very productive by that stage. And that is the second part of this whole interpreter thing I was referring to earlier. So
Yeah.
the second part is that I happened to be one of the first public speakers on mindfulness meditation in Russia and in the Russian-speaking world,
Yeah.
just simply because it was what was interesting to me, and I wanted to share, and I was sharing it in all forms available, and mostly putting it on the internet so people could have access from wherever in the world. And yeah, so I kind of had this Shinzen inspired clarity and precision, and at the same time hopefully some charisma and personality
Yeah.
that people got interested. And yeah, sort of a founding father of the mindfulness, one of the founding fathers of the mindfulness movement in the Russian speaking part of the world. Of course, Buddhism was already very present by that time. Russia has parts of it that are ethnically, traditionally Buddhist,
Yeah.
right? So Buddhism has a long history in Russia, and obviously after the perestroika, the Gorbachev's times, so after the 80s, also lots of information, lots of books were published, but that was it, the Buddhist stuff. And then, of course, lots of esoteric stuff in the bad meaning of this word, like new
Yes.
agey kind of,
Yeah.
like kind of karma cleansing, quantum leaping kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So nothing more precise or scientifically rigorous or clear, or I would say just commonsensical, basically. Just stating all those things related to how our attention and perception works in just clear, everyday, understandable language that everyone can adopt and use for themselves. Yeah.
You, I think it's unique in terms of there's a difference between somebody who can translate English into Russian. There's another thing where you're translating, but also your own experience of your
Absolutely.
practice to be able to translate those subtleties across to a language, so people can kind of grasp, okay, this is what we're doing.
I mean, it's always a kind of a trap. Shinzen used to say, "You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't."
Yeah.
So that's the way I think about those things. That of course, something is being lost in translation, something is being distorted by the way I am, by my personality, by my background, upbringing, and whatnot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is no other way to translate. By necessity, you put it through your system and digest it somehow, and to the best of my abilities, I try to step back from the material and not to influence it in a way that harms people. So my intention was always practice oriented.
Yeah.
I'm not too interested in just translating. So I was always about the actual good of it.
Yeah.
So
In terms of the essence of what?
right. So it's not just random musings about whatever philosophy or neuroscience or some other questions of life, but about how we can apply it to our everyday life, to the now of it. Basically,
Yeah.
there is no other time to practice. So always a practitioner myself, always trying to deepen my own practice and to understand things better. So by necessity, I had to dig into the neurosciences. By necessity, I had to dig to the tradition, to the Buddhist roots of it. Still being an independent scholar, not affiliated with any particular institution or organization, but yeah, I regard myself as a scholar of mindfulness, a scholar of contemplative and somatic practices, both modern and traditional, and yeah, trying to kind of digest and comprehend and provide my own kind of unique view
Yeah.
on all this, because obviously, I mean, there are many mindfulness teachers in the world. There are like thousands of great books, thousands of great teachers. I'm not in a position to say that my view is the best, or I understand things better than anyone else, or whatever. I guess people are just drawn to different ways of talking about this stuff, and drawn to different personalities, and drawn to different vibe, to use this word.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have my own, peaceful corner and all that.
And could you expand about your peaceful corner in terms of, okay, having gone through, the materials of Shinzen, basic mindfulness, how has
Yeah.
your practice and how you view, a practice, how has that evolved into what you do now?
I mean, pretty much all I do is mostly informed by Shinzen,
Yeah,
literally. So, of course, I've read tons of different books and articles and attended many different teachers and retreats and different traditions and, Thailand, retreats in Thailand, in Nepal, in Myanmar, Russia, different places. But my optics, so to speak,
yeah,
were always Shinzen inspired or Shinzen informed optics. So what he does best, really, is he gives those clear coordinates. I don't know how else to put it.
yeah,
Very, I like I like the early name, basic mindfulness. Basic, not exactly in terms of it being primitive, like not advanced, but actually the opposite of that. Basic in terms of being fundamental. So what he provided me with is this fundamental way of relating to how my attention and perception work, and so I can use any kind of other approach or tradition or meditation method, and it is still understood through those lenses, through
yeah,
those basic lenses of like sensory strands and the attentional skills development and so forth. So yeah, now currently for the last maybe 4 years, I was particularly interested in the early Chinese Buddhist traditions, and specifically in the teachings of Tian Zhiyi. Zhiyi was an early systematizer and a very influential figure for all the Far Eastern, East Asian Buddhism. So China, Japan, and so forth. One of the founding fathers of the East Asian Buddhism in
yeah,
general, and his lineage, his school is known as a Tiantai school, or Tendai in Japanese. And I talked with Shinzen about it actually, and he said that he explicitly structured his system inspired or based on Zhiyi's teachings.
wow,
So
okay,
and then if maybe you remember Shinzen had a very long article on shamatha and vipassana, like the
yes,
calming and inside the history and the science of it. A very long and very, very interesting article I've also translated at some point, and it ends by a quote from Zhiyi. And of course, I didn't know by that but by that time I was translating it. I was,
yeah,
some Chinese guy saying something, about shamatha and vipassana.
yeah,
And something along the lines that there are many, many practices, there are many, many gateways, doorways to nirvana, but they don't exceed, or they are all embraced into the two gateways ways of the calming and the insight, shamatha
yeah,
and vipassana. So I've translated that, and only after, I don't know, 10 years, I got to G's actual writings, saw the quote, and then I
yes,
was like, okay, so I knew about him from Shinzen, and even
Yes.
before that, 20 years ago, when I was studying Chinese history and tradition, I also learned about Zhiyi. So it kind of now it started to get sense and to get all
Oh, that
fit together.
connection.
Now
Yeah.
began to fit together. So amazing. So for the last few years, I got very deep into this rabbit hole of the early Chinese views and practices, and especially this G's approach to understanding how to do the practice. So I now I try to combine both. So basically, doing the Shinzen inspired stuff, which
Yeah.
is precise, science compatible or science based,
Yeah.
that I can teach to the companies or something like that, and another is this Buddhist way of talking about all those things. So I call this project my Marvellous Gates. It's a G's term, Marvellous
And
Gates.
can you share a bit about how that approach looks, and the process, and what you do, the insights you gain from studying Zhiyi?
By the time that he was living and operating in China, it was the 6th century AD, CE, 6th century. So by that time, there were no Chinese Buddhist schools at that point yet. So no like Chan Zen Buddhism or something like that. No any particular school. A very disorganized kind of grassroots understanding of Buddhism, getting to China through different ways. So people were literally bringing different texts, different scrolls, with them. They got translated into the Chinese through different translators in different ways. So, it was very disorganized. So Zhiyi had this task before him of how to integrate it all, how to provide some sort of a coherent, comprehensive framework that could fit all those views and practices and strands of Buddhist knowledge together in an unconflicting way, so to speak. So this teacher says you have to do this, and this teacher says you have to do this. How all this fits together. And that's what he did, and that's what he's known for, and that was his biggest influence. So he tried to incorporate all of the teachings into his system, all of the views and all of the practices.
Yeah.
So one of the main things that I get inspired by is how he says that, okay, in modern terms and in modern kind of Vipassana vibe kind of practice, meditation practice, people usually talk about stages
Yeah.
stages of practice. So you
Yeah.
proceed through certain stages, you advance in your practice towards, I don't know, enlightenment, or you name the goal, but still there are some certain steps to it.
Yeah.
And in traditionally it's known as a gradual path, a gradual path. Now, some certain schools of Buddhism, like Zen, for example, or Dzogchen, they talk about a non-gradual or a sudden path. Okay, so meaning that everything we strive to achieve or to get to is already fully present here. So it's not a question of getting there, but rather a question of seeing it clearly or embodying it fully, or something like that.
Yeah.
So so the idea that you have to get somewhere actually moves you away from the fruit of the practice. So a sudden path, and different schools have inclinations towards like different explanations of what you have to do. So some are more towards the gradual understanding of the practice, and some inclined towards the sudden way of interpreting it. But Zhiyi, he said, okay, so there is the gradual path, the sudden path. There is a mixed path where you use whatever fits, whatever works. His main work on the subject is called the Six Dharma Gates, or the Six Marvellous Gates. So the Marvellous Gate is a quote from there. The six gates are basically six methods of practice. And he outlines them in a fashion that you can practice any one of them or all of them in succession, one leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Or you can practice them in reverse, so going from the sixth to the first. He calls it the bodhisattva practice type. Or you can practice them according to what fits your needs at a particular point. Or you can practice any one of them, knowing that every method includes every other method by definition, and he explains how is it actually so. So I call it a matrix, a matrix, not a neo-matrix kind of thing, but not the the bullets matrix, but a graph, a mathematical matrix where all the bits of knowledge are in a fractal, you can say, are all interconnected in all possible ways. So in itself, this approach to understanding practice just blows my mind. And I find it very, very useful. I find it very, very applicable, and it gives a certain perspective. I mean, and now okay, Dzogchen is about this and coming from this angle, and Zen is but not being what's the word, exclusivist, or okay, we are the best way of
this is the right
doing
way.
The practice. This is the right way, this is the best way, this is what's called an actual meditation, as opposed to some auxiliary methods and so forth. So I don't like all this the best method speech. So I see a lot of value in just teaching his view and his approach to practice. So that's the practical side, but there is also the view side. So he tried to incorporate all the teachings. Obviously, there were like earlier schools of Buddhism, and then the Mahayana kind of new trends of interpreting all that stuff, all that heritage. And so his view was very inspired by a very famous philosopher, Nagarjuna, a very the most famous Mahayana Buddhism philosopher, Nagarjuna. So he regarded Nagarjuna as one of the founding fathers of his lineage, actually. So Nagarjuna is Tiantai Buddhism first patriarch, So Nagarjuna was talking about the absolute truth and the relative truth, and how there is a middle way of understanding them both. So the relative truth is a truth of our conventional existence. So there are people, trees, jobs, whatever, computers, a conventional level of understanding what's happening. But then there is this absolute way of understanding what's happening, and that's that there are no people, no trees, no computers, that it's all a conditioned kind of projection, that we do all the modern talk on, predictive processing, all the current trends in neuroscience are also about that, how we actively engage in in actually creating this conventional sense of who we are and what's going on.
Yeah.
And so then the absolute level is that all things are empty, to use the Buddhist lingo,
Yeah.
or they are empty of their inherent self-existence. So they exist only in a sense. They are connected to and influenced by everything else. So say a cup doesn't have a nature of a cup. It is made to be a cup by our relating to it as something we can drink from, and so forth.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have any cupness to it, any inherent cupness. I mean, once it's broken, it becomes a cactus holder,
Yes.
something like that. So there is this kind of absolute level and the relative level, and the whole, or samsara and nirvana. Nirvana being the absolute and samsara being our worldly. And the Buddhist path, as it was understood in the early centuries, the early ages of Buddhism, was to get from one to the other,
Yeah.
to get to the other shore of suffering, as they used to put it. And you become dissatisfied with the worldly stuff, with samsaric stuff, and you slowly acclimatize to understanding that nothing worldly can give you a lasting satisfaction, lasting pleasure, because it's all conditioned, so it's all ending at some point.
Yes.
And you are ending at some point, so there is no point in clinging to it, thinking that it will, satisfy your thirst to, okay, now I'm finally okay.
Yeah.
Right? So you get through this layer of samsaric, worldly, or, conventional, relative, and you get to the other shore, the absolute understanding, or the Buddha's understanding of how it all is. And there you get your liberation, right? Now, the later stages of Buddhist thought and views developing was that, it is true to some extent, but while we are talking about samsara and nirvana, or the relative and the absolute in terms of opposites, they condition each other. So you get from here to there, right? Yeah. So you leave samsara, you enter nirvana, and the later thinkers were, how should I? It's the first time I am talking about this stuff in English, so it's quite hard to put it into words.
I'm challenging you, Victor.
It is pretty advanced stuff, to be honest. Anyway, It is very advanced stuff. But bottom line, samsara is nirvana. Nirvana is samsara. So there is some inherent non-dualness to them, and the actual liberation lies not in getting from here to there, but actually by realizing that the idea of being here and there to begin with is a conventional understanding, is a dualistic standpoint. So while there is here and there, you're still trapped by thinking, I have to get there to get liberated, right? And so Zhiyi, to conclude the long story short, Zhiyi, he proposed kind of a third truth, so to speak. So the absolute truth, the relative truth, and the middle truth. So his idea was that the middle kind of transcends and integrates both opposites. So while you're still trapped in the idea you have to get somewhere, you're still trapped in samsaric existence, but by transcending it, and going like kind of meta, going to the middle, which is which is Nagarjuna's idea basically. Nagarjuna's philosophy is called Madhyamaka, meaning the middle way, right? So it is the middle way between those two opposites.
Yeah.
And so I find this also very, very useful because Tiantai Buddhism and Tendai and its branches in Korea, for example, puts a lot of emphasis on our worldly life, that it's that our simple, everyday, simple, deluded human being mind is the way, basically. Zhiyi says that everything you can find out, everything you can achieve, everything you can, the enlightenment, the inherent enlightenment as it became to get known later, in the later centuries, Ben Tue, inherent enlightenment, is here within this moment of this ordinary mind, lies here. So you don't have to, you don't have to get dissatisfied in it, or you don't have to move away from it. Just exactly the opposite. You can invest yourself into the ordinary activities of your everyday life and get enlightenment and get to know your Buddha nature through that. And that is a very important understanding to me personally. Like now, currently, war in Russia, Ukraine, and I'm very involved in all those matters.
Yeah.
I used to work in Ukraine. I had a mindfulness center in Ukraine. I left it before COVID, and then war. I've lost my parents, both of my parents last year. I kind of want to, to run away from the worldly. I kind of want to find some ultimate salvation that lies beyond all this. But at the same time, when I read Zhiyi's personal history, for example, I understand that he himself, went through all of that. He was a happy child, living in one of the kingdoms at that time. China was split into many different kingdoms, the so-called northern and southern dynasties period, and so it was Liang kingdom, and his father was an official, like some kind of court official in a capital there. And then when Zhiyi was 17 years old, the country the kingdom was invaded by another, the Wei kingdom, and both of his parents were killed. He was 17. They left the city. It was destructed, of course, and destroyed. And he and his brother, they left. They ran away, and he became a monk. And then he got through very different periods in his life, where he was actually serving 3 different kingdoms, through 3 different dynasties. He was very kind of courted by, in all of the meanings of this word, right? By the ruling people of the next kingdom he ran into, the Tian kingdom. And then when the Sui dynasty came to power, invading and capturing the Tian, the Sui dynasty was the first to integrate the country, basically, invading all of the other kingdoms and subduing them. And he was a personal teacher of the emperor's son, of the first emperor's son, who then, after Zhiyi's death, already became the next emperor of Sui dynasty. So, and at the same time, he was an ascetic. So spending many years in retreat in the mountains. Tian is the name of the place where he used to practice. So, losing his parents, being, forced to leave his hometown, witnessing the destruction, the invasions, the change of powers, new kingdoms coming to rise, being a hermit, being a court Buddhist teacher for many years and invited to teach in the most prestigious places of that time and so on. So a very kind of turbulent and very rich personal life. So I'm very inspired by that guy, and by the depth of practice, and by the scope of his understanding and of what he tried to, put together, to incorporate into his system. So, yeah, I can talk about him for ages. So let me just stop here.
Yes. And I'm guessing, with all the reading, there was the insights that you were getting through his life. Were there any practical your own experience that you can share of that connects all this?
Oh, it's very interesting. I was reflecting on that. So let's say I started to practice with Shinzen in 2009. And I got interested in Zhiyi and his teachings around 2019, maybe 20, something like this.
Yeah.
So 10 years of heavy Shinzen, industrial strength mindfulness,
Yes.
as he calls it. And then to a certain degree, I got dissatisfied with the industrial strength mindfulness, I would say, not in Shinzen's approach or teachings per se, but in my attempts to make it as secularized as possible, and I wanted some new inspiration. I wanted to have a new flavor to my practice, and Zhiyi and Mahayana in general, Mahayana Buddhism in general, and Zhiyi, he based his teachings on the Lotus Sutra, and Lotus Sutra is one of the most well-known Mahayana sutras in the Eastern Asia. So China, Japan, and so on. All of the schools are very, very influenced by the ideas and parables and so on from the Lotus Sutra. And so I started to get what I call it a Lotus flavor to my practice. So a Lotus fragrance, which is a more poetic way of relating to all this stuff.
Yes.
And of course, the topic of compassion comes to the fore with all the Mahayana Buddhism. So Bodhisattva is a bodhi, enlightenment, sattva, a living being. So Bodhisattva is a living being striving to enlightenment. But the idea of a Bodhisattva path includes compassion or love, you may say, as a main drive, as the main driving force. So love, compassion, it made my practice less industrial, but more kind of soft in a sense. And many people who know me for many years, who study with me or through me. For a long time, they say I've changed to become much, much softer, much more fluid in my approach to practice. I mean, Shinzen is very fluid. His whole system is a constructor. You can modify it the way you want and fit any purpose, any need, and it's like extremely powerful. But now there is a way of referring to it as to a constructor, a Lego kind of thing, and then there is this Lotus pond, which is maybe a different way of relating to all the same stuff. And so compassion, love, and kind of tenderness, I would say, is one of the things. Another things is a teaching on Pure Lands. It's a very important concept in Mahayana Buddhism. Pure Lands, well, you can take it like literally, or you can understand it more philosophically or psychologically, mystically. So a more literal way of thinking about Pure Lands is like some sort of heaven, So there is our life here on Earth, but then there are certain other, exquisitely wonderful places you can get reborn into or get to at some point. And the idea that is that different mighty beings, basically different Buddhas, different, very advanced bodhisattvas, they all have their own Pure Lands. So by getting to a certain being's Pure Land, you can advance in your practice. It's more, cheerful in general, and you have less suffering, and it helps you to, to advance on your path. But a more kind of mystical or psychological understanding of Pure Lands is that you can create it by acting like a bodhisattva, by acting like a Buddha. So famously, Vimalakirti Sutra, for example, another Mahayana sutra, or the Platform Sutra of Huineng, a famous Chan teacher, one of the first Chan Zen Buddhism patriarchs. They say that Pure Lands are none other than your own mind, right? So this non-gradual Mahayana approach to practice is that when you look at yourself and the world, you can look at it and yourself as a human being, as just an ordinary human, perception.
Yeah.
You can look at it as a hungry ghost, a hungry devilish being, or an animal driven by primal basic desires, hatred, or lust, or and whenever you embody those qualities, you basically create a hellish environment around you. And but at the same time, if you are able to shift into a perspective of a bodhisattva or a Buddha, literally see the world through the eyes of the Buddha. It's an actual expression in Mahayana Buddhism. So Buddha's eyes, Bodhisattva's eyes, or a flesh eye, a human being eye. So then you can create a Pure Land just here by your own thoughts, words, and actions. And especially given what's happened, the madness that's happening in the world right now. I mean, probably it was always here, but during kind of more stable-ish times, there was a deceptive kind of idea of things more normal, being more stable or whatever. But now, of course, the war is a catastrophe of like enormous proportion, and the climate thing and the
There's a
whatever you
lot of
name it.
disasters.
I mean
Yes.
everywhere, yeah,
Yeah.
everywhere. So this idea of not just being an interpreter, not just being, a mindfulness teacher, or not just being a decent person, but an idea of being striving to be a bodhisattva that creates a pure land by making it a pure land,
Yeah.
other than this disaster. It's something very valuable to me at this point. So yeah, I find a lot of inspiration in Chinese Buddhism, in Mahayana sutras, in the Lotus Sutra for sure. It's a beautiful, beautiful, literary piece
Literally, yeah.
of work.
Yes.
An amazing text, amazing book, but also like very, very deep and very, very rich. And the three main ideas of the Lotus Sutra that are most telling to me. The first is that there is only one teaching. They call it the Ekayana, one, like Mahayana, Hinayana. So Ekayana, one vehicle, one teaching.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, everything points to this one kind of direction and liberation. But then the second idea is that there is an indefinite number of ways of getting there.
Yeah.
So, like in Shinzen's type of, thinking and doing things, and also Zhiyi and many others, there is no the right way, the best meditation. I mean, the right way and the best meditation that works for you in your condition, in your situation today, in many with your, I don't know, proclivities and so forth. So many, 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 many different conditions for anything to work well. So there is no just like one right way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
And it also resonates deeply, deeply, deeply with me. And so I try to find a unique approach to, every person and situation I work with. And so that's the second idea. And then the third idea is that everything that we have to achieve or want to achieve or strive to is already fully present here. So rather than, so call it Buddha nature or original enlightenment or whatnot, but the idea is still the same, that liberation, enlightenment, salvation is not somewhere in the future you have to get to, somewhere there that's not now, but actually the opposite is true. If it is ever possible, it is possible only now. And if it is ever possible, it can be only now fully present.
Yeah.
There are no steps to advance towards this goal. So it directs yourself not to some, distant future or a better tomorrow, but a better now, a better today, a better action, thought, words that you utter at this particular moment. So that's what's very, very important in my practice, these days also. So
Yeah.
everything there is now, is here now. I mean, it sounds very new age, but whatever.
Yeah. No, I think it's very relevant, and I think it's beautiful in terms of it making it the changes now. in the present. Yeah.
Nowhere else. I mean,
Yeah.
nowhere else. If there is a potential to understand it, it's now. If there is a potential to realize it, it's now. And if it is here now, it cannot be a half-baked.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Victor, for sharing this deep discussion, and also the beautiful lotus that you are. So, thank you very much.
the lotus fragrance. Oh,
The lotus fragrance.
Right. I've remembered the while I was talking about those three main things from the Lotus Sutra, the one teaching, the infinite number of ways, and the inherent, the always already here thing. I wanted to finish by referring to another Chinese idea about this ocean of suffering. When we were talking about the early days of Buddhism and the idea that you have to get from here to there, so to cross the ocean of suffering, as it goes. There is a famous Chinese quote. I'm not really sure who was the original author of this saying, but it's very widespread in all Eastern Buddhism, and the quote goes that the ocean of suffering is infinite, but the only thing you need to do is just turn your head, and here lies the shore.
Yeah.
Okay, so the ocean is infinite, but turn your head, and here is the shore.
Yeah.
And so that's that.
Yeah. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. Thanks for asking, and thanks for inviting. It's a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help and support us, please like and subscribe below.